Hello, this is Jesse Rodriguez Melendez from All Bases Covered, and welcome to Spanglish World Networks on Zingo TV channels 249, 250, and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Welcome to this week's edition of All Bases Covered. I'm your host, Jesse Rodriguez Melendez. Super proud of the work that I am getting accomplished this week through Sports Business Institute. I am working with Coach Tony on launching a really exciting new program for himself. And I've also been working on the rebrand for Armored Athlete. For those of you that know a little bit about Armored Athlete, it is a scripture inspired athletic apparel line that I am so super proud of and have been working on for many years now and am going through a rebranding stage. And so stay tuned for all the exciting stuff that we have going on through the Sports Business Institute because there is a lot. This coming Friday, I will be conducting a free masterclass for sports coaches. This is really geared towards youth sports coaches and how to actually make themselves a six-figure sports coach. How to go from seeing the one-to-ones to seeing the one-to-manys and really building and scaling your business. So stay tuned for that. That's coming this Friday, 10 a.m. I will be doing that live. If you want information about that, just comment on any one of the social channels. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube, and we're live right now on all of these channels. So if you're live with us, leave a comment if you want more information about the event this Friday. Or if you want to ask us any questions with the guests that I have on today, please feel free to do so. He's going to be joining me just here in a second. But if you have any questions for us, please do so while he's here. He'll be more than happy to answer those questions. And please share this broadcast because there's been so much wonderful information we're sharing through the show. This show, I created it really because I want to help sports coaches that are feeling the overwhelm or the frustration of building a viable business, but never losing sight of who they're trying to impact in their communities or right through their athletes. It's really important that we never lose sight of what the mission is when you become a youth sports coach. Really important to keep your athletes always at the forefront of what you're really working towards is really to make them better. And so I wanted to bring this very special gentleman on with me tonight because I've been watching him. We connected through LinkedIn, and if you're on LinkedIn with us, please feel free to reach out to me. It's such a great place for all of us to connect. But I connected with him on LinkedIn, and I just saw what he's been doing. And what really attracted me most to him is the work that he's doing with children, the work that he's doing for kids. And so just reached out to him and I said, I got to have you on my show. And so I want to welcome Tim Claiborne to our show. He's the founder of Locker Room Sports Community and Pro Athletes Helping Kids. He is a lifelong athlete based out of Phoenix, Arizona, with over 20 years experience as an entrepreneur in the sports industry, with projects ranging from event production, which he's going to talk to us a little bit about tonight that I'm really interested in, licensed sports online retail and export, cause marketing, so very specific, and many partnerships with pro athletes in both business and nonprofit. So please help me welcome this wonderful gentleman, Tim Claiborne, to the show. Tim, it is so nice to have you here with us. I have been watching your work, and I've just been fascinated by the work that you're doing, especially with reaching the youth. I know that that's something that you're passionate about. So please tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how you are accomplishing all that you're accomplishing to, further our mission here to, really reach the youth through sports.
Right. Well, it's always funny when people say they're watching me. I'm like, you are? Like, I get kind of like, oh, I gotta make sure I'm doing everything right, because I hear that a lot. But no, I mean, I love sports. I mean, for so many reasons. Like, it inspires people and it brings people together and it challenges people. And it's funny, just from a business perspective. You go to a business event, you go to a business networking thing, you go to a conference, and everybody's just kind of, well, whatever. And as soon as you tell them, I work in sports, I work with athletes, I create events with, doing sports, everybody gets all excited. And I don't even tell them. I'm not like overselling, but you just see the way people light up around the topic of sports, and everybody relates to it on some level. Everyone has, some kind of, with childhood memories or play sports, or this is my favorite team, or whatever it is, and it's something that just brings people together really, really quickly. And, obviously athletes have such an influence in our culture because of the standing of sports. And
Right.
that's something that I love, being able to help athletes really understand the power of their platform and the influence that they do have, because it's really not a choice. You have that influence. You can choose how to use the influence, or you can choose to be conscious of it, or not be aware of it, or not be responsible, but it's there. And I don't think, honestly, a lot of athletes really even realize the influence and the power that they have, because they're so busy. They're working on their game, they're focused on their team, they're doing their thing. And a lot of times the focus is very much internal, and they're not, especially after guys retire, and they're not in the news every day. They don't have the agent out there pushing them, or the franchise out there pushing them. And I don't think they realize, I used to really have a following, used to really have an impact and an ability to do things for people. And so I love creating events, being able to connect kids with athletes, and promoting so many of the great things that we all learn from sports. So.
Yes, and tell me a little bit more about that, because I saw recently, and that's how we connected even further. I saw that you're starting to create these networking events, or tell us a little about the events, and where are you looking? Have you started them, or will start? And if so, where will you be starting your first one?
So we've been doing the virtual, the virtual, like, nationwide. In fact, we have people outside of the country too. But
Right.
the virtual events ever since the COVID, when the whole sports world shut down and nobody knew what to do, and everybody was really, really kind of accessible, and I think looking for different ways to connect and collaborate. And we have tested, on a smaller scale, some of the events out here in Phoenix. But the idea is to be able to have these events all over the country, where we're, it's a networking event, like any sort of business event, but it's very much focused on the sports world, and on, kind of creating that atmosphere where, yes, it's about business, it's about networking, and it's fun because we're bringing sports to you, and we've got a lot of athletes involved. And it gives an opportunity for many of the athletes that are transitioning from sports into entrepreneurship to have a platform to get connected. Because it's funny, like, the athletes want to hang out with the CEOs and entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs and CEOs want to hang out with the athletes. So that works out really, really well, and everybody's able to benefit and learn from each other. And of course, we always want to be able to tie in charitable impact, and do some things there in the community as well.
Yeah. And how did you get interested in sports, and how did you break into the sports industry?
Well, I mean, I've been interested in sports for, I guess, as long as I can remember, which was kind of strange, because it wasn't something in my family at all. And
Really?
so, no, not at all. And so I played sports all the way, as a youth, and into the college level. And then as I got older, I was like, I'm going to go get a corporate job. And I was like, this is boring. I don't want to do this. Right. So I had to figure out some way to kind of reinvent it. And so for a lot of years I was in the online retail space. And so we did a lot of, sports marketing, as far as, licensed gear, selling hats and jerseys and memorabilia and collectibles on the internet, and export. And then I got really into the concept of cause marketing, which is like, okay, there's a lot of ways to make money. There's a lot of ways to run a business, but why not do it in a way that's impactful and helps people? And it's just a little more meaningful to selling hats on the internet to people you'll never meet. Like, that wasn't really doing it for me, So I started working with a lot of sports related nonprofits and athlete foundations, helping them, create their events, promote their events, raise more money from their events. And right about the beginning of 2020, I was like, I want to go all in full time on the event thing. That's all I want to do, right? And so wound up being not that wound up being not real good timing, right? So
Yeah.
then then there was the pivot into, hey, let's, I know the online world, that's what I've done that, so let's get back and we'll do some of these events and do the networking and work on building some of the partnerships and business collaborations with athletes. And I love doing that just because I just I relate so well to athletes and people from the sports world,
Mm.
and understand a lot of the challenges with transition when you're like, okay, I'm not an athlete now. I got to go do this other thing that doesn't feel like me. And I think more than anything else, what athletes really miss more than the game, because you understand, hey, I'm getting older. I'm not going to be playing football my whole life. You miss
Right.
that community, right? You have those people, those memories, and that locker room experience, and that's what everybody loses connection with, because not only are you not playing anymore, it's not your career anymore, but you're kind of cut off and isolated. And so that's what people have enjoyed so much. I think it's just coming together and being able to be with like-minded people and just build that quick rapport. We had, people that have kind of reconnected with teammates that they played with in the past, and things like that. So
Yeah, and I love that, and I love that you just said something that's so key, and it's one of the reasons I get reached out to, right? There's athletes that finish their career and then really feel lost.
right.
What am I doing next? How do I continue to use my first love, or what has kept me and sustained me for so long? How do I continue to make it viable in my life? And a lot of them need that outlet. They need that connection. They need someone that's been there and done it from a business perspective that can now walk them through the process. And
Right.
so is that generally what will happen? Do you find that athletes will reach out to you, and is it any sport, or do you deal mostly in a certain sport?
Well, I think the communities that are the largest, that I'm connected with, would be, baseball and football. Working with NFL, Major League Baseball. But we have a really diverse group in like every possible way. Every sport, every part of the country, every race, with men and women. It's like it's kind of a little bit of everybody, and it's been pretty cool. But yeah, it's like there's this interesting thing where athletes have so many of the traits that it takes to succeed in business and to build something else here. But at the same time, it's a different sport. So it's not as easy as like, hey, I was great at this, so all I got to do is walk over here and I'm going to be great at this. And
Right.
and I think, sometimes it's hard. You're not used to asking for help or admitting that you don't know anything or
Right.
that you have to start over. And so I think coming together with a lot of other people that are in a similar situation and are dealing with, the same types of struggles, it makes it easier. But also there's such a power in their, like I said, in their network and in their influence. And it's like, you can accelerate this probably a lot faster than somebody who doesn't have, your name recognition, or doesn't have, the types of people that you have in your circle. So it's a huge advantage having that athletic background.
And so generally, what are some of the things that you'll help them, like make the connections with?
So I mean, a lot of it is just, the initial, you say the initial transition side, right? So
Mhm.
a lot of athletes really get stuck, and there's never really that thing that's next. And so there's a lot of, I hear a lot of stories about, well, I didn't know what to do, and so I went into coaching, and I didn't really want to do
Mhm.
coaching. Or there's kind of like this graveyard of like 8 different businesses that were tried, which is normal if people go through that. It's just kind of that
Right.
that trial and error phase, and figuring out what I want to do and what I'm good at. If you're able to shortcut that process and not have to do it that way, and learn from people. So a lot of it's like that, creating the mentorship and coaching type relationships that you have in sports, right? Where it's like, okay, there's certain systems and there's certain processes, and you've got to learn from people who've already been there and already done it. And so I think it's a big part of it.
And so what are you hoping to accomplish with some of these events that you're going to do live? Because I know you're going to start implementing the live event again, correct?
Right, right. Well, like I said, a lot of it is the charitable impact. A lot of
Mm.
it is giving athletes an opportunity, giving them a platform to, to promote their businesses and to develop new connections in the business community. And then, as well as, like I said, it's just a lot of fun ways to bring people together in just a little more unique and interesting than your sort of typical, business chamber of commerce meeting where we all walk around passing
Yeah,
out
right.
and stuff like that. So.
And so when you say charitable, like what are some of the things that you are wanting to connect those athletes with? Like
Right.
what
I
kind
mean,
of
my favorite causes, I think, all involve children, and
yeah,
they've been able to be lucky enough to go into a lot of in the past, going to like a lot of pediatric hospitals with the NFL
mm,
players, and the Super Bowl is coming back here to Phoenix, and hopefully now that all this COVID stuff is gone, well, it's not gone, but I mean it's
right, right.
we're kind of
It's
moving
not a,
on from like
yeah, it's
nobody's
not
allowed in here type thing to be able to do that again. I love doing the youth camps and just having veteran athletes come in and talk to youth athletes and kids and college kids, and pass on a lot of the
yes.
wisdom and experience that they've learned. I feel like that's one thing that so many athletes love doing, is just being able to share their experiences and help people learn from their mistakes and what they've gone through and all of that. So,
Yeah, and it's so great. That is also one of the components when I'm working with coaches and we're helping to build or scale a business. I always say to them, look for ways that you can, create impact in a charitable way, right? Like look for opportunities, look for ways that you can become resourceful, look for ways that you can help your athletes see you doing something other than just wanting to have them be go out there and be the best and we want that. We want our athletes to work hard, we
right,
want them to be the very best that they can be, but we also want them to learn how to take their voice, like you said, how to take their platform and do something that's meaningful, do something that will create a legacy for them. That in essence, I always tell them, look at it like you're leaving a legacy, and look at it in a way that your athletes are looking to you and saying, okay, how do I then, you know, um, pass the torch to the next generation?
right,
Right? Because for me,
right.
that's we used to have a baseball and softball facility in the inner city. We were in the Bronx.
Okay,
And our philosophy there was, as we teach you, you teach the younger ones. As we teach you, you then pass it down. It was always that kind of philosophy. And what Coach Tony used to do was he would take the high school boys and then he would bring them into the younger age groups and say, okay, now I'm going to have you alongside me and I'm going to have you mentor them. I'm going to have you coach them, because now you're serving so many purposes. You're teaching them how to learn the game from a different perspective, but you're also teaching them to give of
right,
themselves, to give something that they can never get back, right? Isn't that a
right.
wonderful, it's a wonderful thing. And I think that we need to see more of that in sports. I wish that we could see more of this kind of thing happening, because especially now, especially because of COVID, right? So many of our kids were locked up for so long, and suddenly they're going back out and they're playing sports, and and hopefully they're getting to play a sport, and having that kind of encounter, I think, just elevates the whole experience for them, right? Wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, definitely. It really does, and it's interesting too. Like you said, how there's kind of the both sides of that. Where I've seen these events where it's like, okay, technically the volunteers are there to help other people, but the volunteers are getting as much out of it as those
Mhm.
that are being served, right? Like this is as impactful for them in a lot of ways, and there's something really interesting about not only like I said, going into hospital and being able to really connect with people and
Mhm.
understanding the impact to them, and just sort of the whole just awareness and gratitude that comes from that. But just doing a youth camp where you teach kids, and it's funny to me, like working with my son and working with other kids, like when you have to actually teach something and explain it, all of a sudden you gain a better understanding of it. I mean, there's
That's
things where
right.
I'm out there coaching baseball, and when I actually have to break it down and actually have to communicate it, I'm like, I wish I would have understood this when I was 16, because I was just doing it on raw effort and athleticism. I didn't even get it, and now it's like, wow, now that I actually show you how to do that, like I didn't even get that before. So you learn too, and there's a lot of that with the business mentorship, right? Where once you've got to try to explain somebody how you created a result, and all of a sudden you gain insights into your own process that you didn't even really understand before.
So what's been your favorite experience through sports?
My
Like what
favorite.
What's something that you've experienced because of sports that has been meaningful and, has been that
I,
kind?
I would say honestly, like my relationship with my sons, I talk about this sometimes, where if I really think about it, I mean, so many of the memories that we've had have been some way through sports. Whether it's us, traveling. We take these vacations where it's like they're going to make me go to like 6 pro events in 5 days, or we go, or where we go do something, or whether we're just out, playing together, doing something outdoors, or whether it's my son's tournaments or my son's high school events, and just I realize like how much sports has been at the center of the relationship, and how I think it's in a lot of ways, like I've always felt like I've been a lot closer with my kids than some dads are with their kids, and I think that's been a big part of it. It's just because we've always had that thing that we can go through right away. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and and that's great, because one of the things that we got to watch for a long time, we had over 10 teams that we, through our facility, and they used to travel a lot. And, it would, and sometimes it would be the whole family, like it would be mom, dad, grandma, auntie, uncle, cousins, we would do trips, like we would go to Texas for tournaments, or Florida, or wherever we were going, and it was an entourage. And I used to
Right.
say it's so great, because it really, sports has this unique, really bonding families and bringing everyone together. And it's like it's the team effort, right? It's like the team of one and the team of the whole team, right? It's like those,
Right.
you're cheering on yours, but you're cheering on the, the bigger group as well. And that was one of the things that I used to love. I used to say, man, it's so great to watch how everyone comes together and becomes a family. The team, the other moms and the other dads, and the kids themselves. A lot of these kids would grow up and they became really like family to one another. And then now they're men, and they're having, they're getting married and having kids, and they're baptizing each other's kids. And I'm like, it's just so wonderful. And so, yeah,
Right.
that's one of the things that I truly do love about sports, is that it has a unique way of really bringing families and people together. Um, and I love that what you're doing, right, by these networking events, it creates sort of that kind of an environment where it's like, okay, we're part of Tim's, what is it called, the sports locker room community.
Oh, locker room sports community.
Locker
Right.
room sports community. And so, you bring people together, and then suddenly when we're on one of your, networking, it's like, oh, here's so and so. Oh, hey, we haven't seen each other since we last spoke. And so it creates sort of that community and that kind of bond within, these types of events that you're doing. So when will you start your live events, and where when is going to be like the first one? Because I know I saw you mention some, but I wasn't sure if you had actually
Well,
picked some dates yet.
right. So the first one that we'll be doing on a monthly basis, and I don't have the date yet on the first one. We're doing every month here in Phoenix, Scottsdale area, and so that'll be
Okay.
something I'm doing with the Fiesta Bowl, and my friend Todd Stottlemyre, who we're talking about families. I mean, between him and his brother and his father, I mean, it's just an amazing baseball family there. But we're looking at I'm building some partnerships, and lining up some venues. A lot of them will be athlete owned venues. Like I said, a big part of it is helping them, promote their businesses and build those networks. Some of them will be in collaboration with local nonprofits, but we're starting out here. So, Phoenix, Vegas, San Diego, and LA. Looking at Dallas, doing something hopefully up at the Cowboys training center up there,
Nice.
and
Awesome.
I think Chicago, Atlanta. But eventually, I'd love to have this in as many different cities as we can. And a big part of it is just kind of we're working on building. Like I said, finding a venue, getting a couple of sponsors, but really building that core group of people who are like, hey, we want to do this, we want to run with it, because each one is going to have its own sort of unique local feel and impact and core. So that's what's a little different than doing something virtually, where everybody's coming together. So I love having something that's uniquely local to that city as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so please keep New York and Florida in mind.
Yeah, I think I think the fall was when it'll really kick off. Especially a lot of it'll probably be in conjunction with some tailgate parties at football games and stuff like
Yes,
that. But
that's
yeah.
awesome. I love that. So what kind of things should people expect at some of these events?
So if you're, like I said, if you're in the sports industry or you're an athlete and you've got a business, that's really going to be a big part of, just getting together and
Now,
networking,
when you,
finding.
now, when you say business, though, Tim, like what kind of businesses? What are we looking at? Like, what kind of people should be interested to coming to these kind of events? Like
Right.
anybody who's
So,
just involved in sports, or is it something more specific?
so it can be specific. Like, for example, there'll be some events that are strictly for athletes, but like
Yeah.
for a typical locker room event, the ones we've done either online or in person, it's pretty broad based across the sport. We're going to have, pro athletes and coaches. We're going to have people that are in sports tech that, work in the front office. They work for the pro teams. We have people that, there is media. So we get a lot, podcasters and people that have shows. A lot of nonprofits, and that's been cool. Like we talked about, the nonprofits come together and find ways to collaborate with the businesses and with each other. Because a lot of times you've got these 3 or 4 organizations and they've got very much kind of overlapping services, and they can do a lot more when they work together. But it's a real kind of broad-based coalition across the sports industry for sure.
Yeah, and you'll have like vendors come and they can sort of present their
Oh
ideas.
yeah, yeah. There's definitely opportunities as far as vendors and sponsors and everything like that. So, but
Awesome.
getting on the online virtual ones gives you a really good idea of kind of the type of people that are involved. That's probably a good way to start. But I'll have all the details once we get rolling. In
And
person.
when is your next virtual event? Do you have one already set up?
So that it'll be this Friday. We were doing them once a month, and so it's gonna be every Friday now, just for simplicity and just because it's kind of been rolling and growing. So be every
Nice.
Friday at 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern and it's at, you go to lockerroomcommunity.com is where you can register for it. So we do them on Zoom, and then I've also got another one we're doing every Wednesday, which is the Athlete Entrepreneur Group. So that's open to current and former pro, college, and Olympic athletes. The time does move a little bit on that one because everybody's like, oh, I can't make it this one, I can't make that one. It's a little bit smaller group, but the Friday will be that consistently, 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern all the time.
And that you said you do through Zoom, but if someone wants to find the information, they can just go to the website that you just said,
Right, you can
right?
go to the website to Locker Room Community. If you can't make it, we still have some ways to interact in there. You can set up a profile and all that type of stuff. So.
Yeah, and I've been on some of those events. It's really cool. I love the way you've set those up, and I've made some really cool connections in there myself. Because it's like you said, it's very diverse. It's different, like everyone just hops in and sort of introduces themselves and says what they're working on and how they may be able to connect with other people or even collaborate, which is really cool. Um,
Yeah, no, and it's been fun because I compliments on like, oh, I met all these people and the quality of the people, and it's like I don't mind bragging about that because that's not me. I mean, that's just good people are showing up, and it's a really really quality, caliber of people that you're going to meet at these events for sure. So.
yeah, no, I really do love that. So now, primarily, most of the time, are you mostly on LinkedIn? Because I think I've caught you, I think, mostly on LinkedIn, but are you on some of the other social sites as well?
Mostly on LinkedIn, and we're definitely going to be working on getting a little more active in promoting and bringing in some of our other communities from other social sites as well. I mean, that's been another thing that's been honestly kind of exciting is that it's been very organic. Like it's not like I've been out promoting this that hard, but people keep showing up. So there's like so much more room to really grow it and bring in a lot more people that don't necessarily hang out on LinkedIn. So.
So now, besides working on your networking events and the events you're going to be doing live and that kind of thing, are there other projects that you're working on?
There's going to be some really cool stuff coming up. Like I said, Super Bowl here in Phoenix. I'm really excited that first we do some cool events during spring training. We had 2020, half of spring training was wiped out, and then 2021 we lost all of it. Well, at least we lost all of it as far as like, fan events and player access and all that. And then everybody was like, oh, we got this one last year. And then we had the labor dispute, which made it really impossible to plan any type of event that needed lead time or anything like that. So that's what we're looking forward to for sure. And I'm always, just jumping in on other people's charity events and finding ways to support and promote and all of that too.
So hey, if you're hopping on and you're just catching the show, this is Jesse Rodriguez Melendez with Sports Business Institute and All Bases Covered. And with me live is Tim Claiborne. He is a networking. I mean, just he does these amazing sports networking events, and so he's been sharing some of the events that he's going to be covering, not only virtually, which he had started already prior to even. Did you start pre-COVID or during COVID, Tim?
That
You
was
started
that was during COVID, the
during
virtually.
COVID.
It was just like everybody was, what are we supposed to do? Everybody was kind of shut. It was a very strange time. I mean, as you know, like just all of a
Yep.
sudden nothing's happening in sports and events. I mean, so
Yeah, and one see, this is what I love, and this is why I created this show, is because I find that people that are in the sports world oftentimes they do what they do really well. They're good at, in my case, they're coaches and they're really good at showing up and working with the kids, and but building a business, for the most part for them, is very challenging. And I said I want to create a platform where I can not only help coaches build, scale, launch, really create incredible impacts in their communities, but also, so that they can hear from other folks like you that if you're not a professional athlete, you could still do something in sports. You could still work in sports. You could still create a real business from
right,
what you love,
right. Right,
right?
and then
Like,
you can exactly, and there's so many things that carry over to it as far as just you're an athlete, like you're an amateur athlete, whatever. Okay, you're not a pro athlete, but like when you kind of have that mentality and you're living that lifestyle, and it's funny. Like I looked at the times in my life where I kind of got into a rut and then things weren't going well. It's when I kind of stopped being an athlete, if that makes sense. I just stopped
right?
approaching life that way, and didn't like
Yeah.
where I was at, and it's not like you have to just leave this behind. Like, oh well, I'm not playing anymore, so that's it.
Well, and that's just it. It's such a metaphor for life. I would watch
Right,
the kids, being involved in sports, and I used to say, man, they don't realize that these are some of the best lessons they're ever going to learn. It's going to be life lessons they're going to carry with them for the rest of their lives, lessons that they will teach their kids, whether they're in sports or not. I
right,
mean, it's so wonderful to be involved in, especially in team sports. When you have your
right,
kids involved in team sports and they really have to learn how to be a team player, and really not only watch out for themselves, but watch out for the greater good of the team as well, and their
right,
coaches and the game, the overall love of the game. I always used to say to our players, listen, you're not representing just your name, and you're not only representing our facility, and you're not just representing your family, you're representing the game of baseball. You're representing a city, in that you have to go out there and represent New York City. So know
right,
that you have a lot that you're carrying on your shoulders, and you have to do it with a lot of dignity and respect for the game as well. And so, I always find when I connect with people like yourselves, that, hearing your voice, hearing it from someone who's doing it, hearing it from someone who's not using the excuses. There's one young man, and I'm sure you've come across him on LinkedIn, Arcel.
oh
He's
yeah,
based
yeah.
he's in Africa. I love Arcel. I remember when Arcel first started, and he reached out to me, and he reached out to Tony actually, and he said, I've never played baseball, but I love it. And I really want to start something here locally. And just his passion and his willingness to take on something he had never done like that. But I really felt it. And Tony started sending him, Tony said, okay, here's what you could start doing. You can go. Tony even put together like training curriculums for him. And he said, you could start out really small. These are the types of drills you can start running. Well, this kid has over 60 kids in his program now. And what I love about him is he's never afraid to ask.
Oh
He'll go
no,
and he'll ask. And he said, I'm not afraid to ask because it's not for me.
right. It's not for him. It's for the kids. Right,
It's for the kids. and
right,
and and to watch him do it genuinely with so much love and so much care. Again, this is the kind of impact that sports can have on, not only our world, but on a generation, and on the world itself. Like, it's much larger especially baseball now. I find that baseball is just such a it's become such a wide world sport.
Right.
Like this is where we would have never thought we're going to watch a game of baseball happen. It's happening there. Are you getting those kind of connections as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean,
Right?
you see,
Isn't it fun?
and it's really fun seeing those kids that it's all brand new to them. Like
Yeah.
they've never experienced it. They don't. A lot of them, they've got like the most primitive equipment and
Yeah.
fields, and they don't care. They just want to play. They just want to have fun. They want to learn and challenge themselves. And
Yeah, it's
it's
like
really
these
cool.
real grassroots efforts that, like someone like Garcelle that really did it with absolutely nothing. He's like, he found a dirt park, and just put the kids out there and just started teaching what he knew, the little bit that he did know. Now the kids have uniforms and they have equipment, and, there's people even going to Africa to help him,
Right.
which I think is just so phenomenal. And
Yeah, that
so,
would be so fun. That would be fun because I know I had some conversations with some former players that were kind of open to it. But like I said, that was when we had all the travel restrictions and everything. And but it'd
yeah,
be really cool to like revisit that and go over there. Do a clinic for the kids with some major league
yes,
players and stuff like that. It'd be really fun.
yes. Yeah, and that's the type we've been out to the Bahamas. We've done a couple of these camps in the Bahamas, and I mean, some of the best athletes now in baseball are in the Bahamas. They're phenomenal, and there's a hunger I find when you go to some of these countries that I kind of have to say we're sort of lacking here a little bit now. Like that hunger with the youth that, there used to be so much passion for
Right.
the especially for baseball. I can't speak for all the sports, but I could certainly speak about baseball. And that's one of the things that I'm hungry to see here again, right? That hunger and that fire in their belly. Like I really want to play. I'd rather not go to the beach, or I'd rather not go have fun with my friends. I'd rather not sit on my phone because I have practice, or I have a game, or like I hope that I get to see that again here in the United States.
Right. No, it is, and that's what's been fun watching his program. Is these kids, they don't have much equipment. They're not real skilled or experienced. It's not super structured. They're just out there having fun. And I go to all these tournaments now, and it's like they're like little baseball robots. It's like nobody's
Exactly.
looks like they're really having a good time, and everything is so serious and structured, and the adults are all yelling at them. And yeah,
Mhm.
if they only have the $200 bat instead of the $500 bat, that's their excuse why they
Yeah.
can't get a hit. It's just,
Yes.
and you see these kids and they're just making do with whatever they have and they're having a great time. It's just
Well, and here's another point to that. When we had our facility, we would have parents come in, and Tony always used to tell them, listen, this is not a microwave system. I can't put your kid in the microwave and out is going to pop out a Derek Jeter. It just doesn't happen that way. There's a process to this. And
right,
it's not you who has to be hungry for it. It's your child that has to be hungry for it. It's your kid that is going to have to want to hustle. You're not going to be able to hustle out there for them. So let's start instilling in them that versus making them feel like they just need to walk out there and earn, or be given, right? Like make them earn. They have to be taught that not everything's going to be handed to them. And I
right,
think that that's what was so refreshing for me watching a program like ourselves come to life, because it's these kids that they have no shoes, but they're running on, dirt and rock, and they don't care,
right. Mhm.
right? And so that's the kind of thing that I would love to see our pro athletes also, really and start instilling in some of these events that we're holding for some of these young people, for them to start understanding that this is hard work. They only see the finished project, the finished, you know when an athlete is out there and they're achieving all of the success, and they have the fame and the money and all that stuff, but a lot of them are not seeing the struggle. They're not seeing the hard work it took to get there.
Right.
right? And so I say it's so important that we start getting back to that kind of foundation of, for sports for our kids. And a lot of it also has to do with us teaching parents, saying to parents, listen, this is there just sending your kid to every tournament and spending $800 for your kid to go to a tournament doesn't mean that that's what they need to actually gain some of the success that they need to gain,
Right. Right. And
right?
a lot of kids, like you said, when you see what it really takes to, for somebody to go to the pro level, most kids don't want that, and that's okay. Like it doesn't, they don't have to, be an 11-year-old who's on a trajectory. The Yankees, it's like
Exactly.
maybe they just want to run around and they want to
And
exercise
have
and hang out with
fun.
their friends and have fun. Yeah, it's like that may or may not come for them later, but you can't make them want that. You can't force that on them, and that's what winds up happening. It's like just, and a lot of times it pushes them out because they get burned out on the game, and it's not fun because everyone's putting all this pressure and expectations on them when they're just trying to explore life and just have a good time.
Yeah, and one of the things that I like to also, when I'm working with youth coaches, I tell them, listen, know your audience. If you have a younger age group of kids, you're going to be working with them very differently than when you're working with the older kids. But at all levels, we should still want them to learn that nothing is going to come to them easy, that there's going to be work that has to be put in. But
Right.
most certainly, we don't want a 10-year-old to feel like they're trying out for the major leagues,
Right. Mhm.
right? Which is what's happening a lot, what we find with a lot of what's happening with parents too. It's the same reason why they put their kids on 4 different travel teams in the summer. And then by the end of the summer, the kid's burnt out and really doesn't want to know about it. They don't want to know about baseball or any other kind of sport because they're just so
Right.
burnt out, right?
Right. Mhm.
Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that I say, through some of the mentoring and the coaching, and those of us that have a voice in some of this, it's important that we also start having that kind of message as well. It's like sports are great and it can really help excel your life and it can really, be positive in so many ways. But let's also be realistic and let's also, make it age appropriate. Like every level has a different need,
Right.
right? And also again the aspect of having them realize that even though you're involved in sports, but there's yet so many other aspects to your life, like obviously education is a huge part and should always be the forefront, but then there's also the other aspects of getting involved in your community, even with rec sports, right? Like when kids are involved in their communities and they're playing even rec, just in, whatever their little leagues or, whatever activities they're involved in. I think that that's so important. And again, I would love to see more of our pro athletes getting involved in that, like having some voice in some of that as well. Do you
Right. No,
see?
and that's actually an area that's a problem right now. Is that's what we're losing is that sort of just recreational casual sports where
Mhm.
kids get a
Right.
chance to try different things, partly because there's not a bunch of money in that like there is with these other programs. So
Exactly.
what happens is you either have to decide by the time you're 11 or 12 years old, I'm hardcore and all I want to do for the next 6 years is play basketball or play baseball and travel all over the country, or I'm just going to drop out and quit. Like there's not a lot for those kids that just, they like it and they'd
Hmm.
like to show up, for once a week for practice and once a week for a game, and they want to, and they enjoy it, but they're not hardcore. They don't have that super, competitive drive that they want to be out there all the time. And so then they just wind up sitting around on their phones and their video games all day because there aren't any
Yeah.
of
Yeah, I
those sort of
agree.
recreational mid-level sports for them.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen it happening in Arizona. I mean, here in New York, we've seen a bunch of little leagues actually fold. They've
Yeah.
just they've folded, and it's
Yeah. There's
so
just not a demand for it right now. So,
right, right. And I don't know if it's across the board with all sports. Definitely, we're seeing it with little league and baseball. which also then concerns me because if it's happening with Little League and baseball, I'm sure it's probably happening with other sports as well. And then it brings me to my next concern, which is always about the girls, right? Where does that leave our girls that are interested in getting involved in sports, and sometimes they don't have any kind of outlet because they don't have anything within their communities, or even, and that's one of the things that I love to watch is when I'm like, right now I'm working with a volleyball coach, and she's a youth volleyball coach, and her program is growing so fast, and she decided, I'm just going to work with girls,
Right.
and she's just focusing on the girls now, and it's growing so fast. And I said, this is what we need to see more of, this kind of thing, where we can really start teaching these kids, and maybe even niche it that small, where it's just boys or just girls. And if there's the opportunity for them to play together, wonderful. But I think that it's so great to watch kids just wanting to learn any kind of sport at this point, because otherwise that's what happens. They end up sitting on some gadget, not being involved really in anything. And the
Right.
other thing that I've seen, one of the things we did here in the Northeast was pre-COVID, right before, I would say 6 months before COVID had hit, we started a baseball homeschool, and it was like the first of its kind here in the Northeast. And now we're starting to see, because of everything that's happening with our educational system, especially here in the Northeast, we're starting to see more of that. Is that something you're witnessing in your part of the country as well?
Oh yeah, I mean it's interesting too to see where in a lot of ways the club sports and the travel sports are becoming more of the path to college or pro games than the high
Mm,
school programs. There are a lot of the high school programs are struggling because people are taking their kids out of the traditional school systems, and they have these other paths now where you're like, hey, if our family wants to make this sport, really important, like it actually in a lot of ways is easier to do that when you're on a program like you were talking about, where you have I've seen some of those schools, yeah, where it's basically
mm,
like, we're going to do your school is going to work around work around your sports instead of kind of
right,
the other way around.
right. Yeah, and I mean, for the way we did it was really educationally based first, but
Right.
it really did relieve the athlete of so much of the pressures that they were, because for us, most of the time, our high school group was coming to us very late. They were coming to us at like
Right.
8 o'clock at night. And so by the time they were finishing with their practice, it, might have been 9:30, 10 o'clock, and they still had to go home, and they had to do homework, and they had to do projects. And so,
Right.
these types of programs are really helping them. I don't want to say eliminate, but they're alleviating a lot of those pressures that they were feeling. And
Right.
so, yeah, so I know that, here in the Northeast, I know Florida really there's been like a huge surge of that. And I know that in the past, I had heard of a lot of programs like down in Texas that had them. And I know Arizona's huge with baseball. I mean, I know Arizona's a huge baseball state.
Right.
Um, and so, like those are the types of things that I say, my gosh, if we could start seeing some more of this, where kids are really starting to feel like, okay, these there's a mission, right? It's not just play a sport. There's a mission. There's something that we want to accomplish, and it's always going to be not only just for me, but it's also going to be for the greater good of everyone who's involved. And so
Right.
I love what you're doing, Tim. I applaud, everything that I see you put out. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so great. I'm so excited that Tim's really so deeply involved with all of this. It's more of what we need. How do people, again, tell everyone if they want to get in contact with you, how do they find you, and how do they find your events? And, how can people connect with you?
Sure. So LinkedIn is always probably the best way for me as far as social media. Also, my personal website is just timclaiborne.com. Has a lot of information there. Or you can always go to lockerroomcommunity.com, and you can find out about a lot of the events, and there'll be a calendar on there. You can jump on the virtual events, find out about the in-person events and all of that. So
Well, it has been my absolute pleasure to have you on All Bases Covered here with me tonight. And remember, All Bases Covered, I will be on next week with another exciting guest. I look forward to bringing you shows that are insightful, that bring information, that help you grow your sports entrepreneurship. And I look forward to being with you guys every week. It's just so exciting for me and bringing all these wonderful people. So this show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. Make each day amazing on purpose, and remember to always stay unbeatable. I will see you all next week on another edition of All Bases Covered. All right. Thank you so much, Tim. It
All right. Good to talk to you.
was wonderful having you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.